Hinamoto was a place ruled by humans for a long time. But then, very powerful beings called GEKITOU-HEN and their demon soldiers, Oni, appeared suddenly. They destroyed the strongest kingdoms and took over, starting a time when Oni were in charge. Some humans kept fighting against the GEKITOU-HEN's rule and were known as bands of bush. Now, 156 years later, people in Hinamoto worship the GEKITOU-HEN like gods, and every child dreams of working for the Oni, as it's seen as a great honor. In a small town called Tatsuyama, there's a boy named Musashi. He's the best student at a school where they train to work for the Oni. He's famous for his big, shiny pickaxe, and everyone thinks he's great, but he doesn't really feel happy about it. In his history class, they learned that the bush were bad humans who hurt the people of Hinamoto, especially those who farmed or worked hard. This was until 150 years ago when the kind Oni came and saved everyone from these bad people. Musashi doesn't believe what he's taught in school because he knows the real story. His childhood friend was a bush, and his dad, Jisai Kanamaki, showed them old writings. He taught them that the bush were the ones who fought against the Oni to protect people, and they still do, hoping to give humans real freedom. Musashi and his friend, Kojura, promised to fight the Oni together and become the strongest bush group. Musashi often thinks about these times while he's in class. The teacher tells them that their graduation and the start of working in the mines is tomorrow, and makes them say their usual chant about their dreams of working for the Oni, while the other students are excited. Musashi wants to say he wants to be a bush but can't. After class, Musashi goes to see Kojura at his small house in the woods. He tells Kojura he doesn't want to work in the mines. He reminds him of their promise as kids and shows that his pickaxe is really a sword, and he's been secretly training to fight. But Kojura doesn't want to leave. He thinks people hate the bush and believes his dad might have made up stories to make him feel better. Kojura doesn't think Musashi is serious about being a bush because he's scared to tell others. So he tells Musashi to forget about it. Musashi leaves, upset and determined to prove himself. Kojura hopes Musashi will just live a normal life. He remembers in school when they learned that bush must always carry their swords for everyone to see, and how everyone laughed at him because his sword was so obvious. Kojura's life is tough. He's a garbage cleaner, and people are mean to him, throwing insults while he works. He doesn't want his friend Musashi to end up like him. He finds a package that Musashi accidentally left behind. Inside, there's a big book full of training notes which surprises him. The next day, there's a big celebration for Musashi and his classmates as they get ready to go to the mines. Everyone in town is there to see them off, but Musashi is still thinking about the mean things Kojura said to him. They go through a gate guarded by Oni and climb lots of stairs. At the top, there's another gate. This is where they'll meet their Oni bosses. Before they can go in, they have to give up everything they have, including Musashi's pickaxe that's really a sword, to be clear. Everyone is really excited about going to the mines, but they get really scared when the gates open. They see a huge two-tailed cat demon eating one of the miners. The people who brought them there change how they act and tell them they have to mine rocks for the Oni until they die. All the new miners are shocked and scared because they realize they've been tricked all their lives and are now in a terrible place. Musashi steps up and says he's been getting ready to fight these monsters for a long time, but then remembers he doesn't have his sword. A cat demon turns into a scarier monster and attacks him. Musashi dodges and picks up a pickaxe from the ground. His friends tell him to stop fighting because he can't beat the Oni, but he stands up and says for the first time that he is a bush. He fights the big cat but gets hurt a lot. While fighting, he thinks about why he didn't tell people his true dream earlier. He realizes he wanted to fit in, and that's why he lost his friend Kojura. Just as he's about to be beaten by the Oni, Kojura shows up on his motorbike, Sari Ketitsuki, and saves him. Kojura says sorry for not believing in Musashi and is happy to see he was right about the Oni. They fight together and Musashi uses a special sword move from his notes to defeat an Oni. They beat many Oni and Musashi says he always wanted to be in a bush band with Kojura because it wouldn't be fun without his friend. Kojura agrees to make a band with him. Then, a red light shines in the sky, showing that GEKITOU-HEN, the strongest Oni, is coming. Musashi gets on the motorbike, and Kojura drives towards the light while Musashi fights more Oni. Kojura says he doesn't really want to be a bush and has lost his will to fight. But Musashi isn't worried because he thinks Kojura will want to fight once they start. They see the GEKITOU-HEN and it doesn't look very scary. But then, something unexpected happens. Musashi manages to beat the GEKITOU-HEN with just one swing of his sword. But it's not over yet. The GEKITOU-HEN comes back to life by putting itself back together. People who worship the GEKITOU-HEN bring it a cart full of gold bars, and it eats them like snacks. Then, it turns into a bigger and scarier GEKITOU-HEN named GEKITOU-HEN. The worshippers kneel down, happy to see the GEKITOU-HEN in its true form for the first time in 5 years. Kojura thinks they should run away instead of fighting because it's too dangerous, but Musashi is knocked out. The GEKITOU-HEN grabs Kojura by his sword, and the miners tell him to let go because the Kishin eats swords. But Kojuro won't let go, even though the Kishin is dragging him around and hurting him. He remembers how he used to hate his sword and what it stood for. But his dad told him the Oni were the bad guys and he comes from a brave family that fights for people. Now that he believes his dad, he can't drop the sword. He fights hard, but the Kishin pins him down, takes the sword, and eats it. Musashi wakes up and climbs onto the Kishin's big belly. He hits it over and over until he makes a hole and falls inside, making the Kishin fall in pain. Kojuro is scared his friend might be gone, but then Musashi comes out with the sword and gives it back to Kojuro, telling him he knows it's important to him. Feeling proud of his bush heritage, Kojuro finds the strength to fight and excitedly tells Musashi they should become the best bush band ever. Suddenly, they hear an announcement from a watchtower about a bush band arriving. A huge moving building comes towards the Kishin, breaking through its barrier and destroying everything in its way. A group of bush warriors on Kitatsukis rush out from the building, making an even bigger hole in the Kishin's stomach. They line up in front of the Kishin and use their swords to fly. Musashi and Kojuro are amazed by the strength of the bush, but the band's captain, Natoru Takeda, tells them to leave because it's too risky. However, they argue that they are bush too and were the ones who opened the hole in the Kishin. But opening the hole doesn't really hurt the Kishin. It heals just like before and creates a huge firestorm around it. Kojuro realizes the demon is way too powerful for them and wants to leave, but Musashi won't move. He's determined to make this their first big win as a bush duo. Musashi charges through the flames, defeats a cat demon, and confronts the Kishin. But no matter how hard he fights, the Kishin keeps healing instantly. A glowing green whip wraps around him and pulls him up to the bush camp. He tries to resist, but Captain Takeda explains that even a whole band is struggling to defeat one Kishin because normal attacks don't work. Musashi fighting alone is just risking his life without any chance of winning. But Musashi, being stubborn, breaks free and tries to fight on his own again. While Musashi rushes into battle, Kojuro feels stuck, not knowing what to do. Then, he overhears the bush discussing a plan to hit the Kishin's core horn. Realizing he can't just stand by, Kojuro decides to learn about this core horn. Musashi, in his eagerness, disrupts the bush's formation attack by causing the Kishin to fall. Despite his persistence and the growing sense of dread from the captain's warnings, Kojuro shouts to Musashi, pointing out a large horn in the Kishin's navel as its weak spot. Musashi bravely hits the horn, but his katana breaks upon contact. Captain Takeda steps in, pushing Musashi aside and cutting the horn with his glowing sword, finally defeating the Kishin. The bush gather around the disintegrating Kishin, raising their swords as they absorb its energy. The exhausted miners thank them for saving them from the Oni. Captain Takeda addresses the crowd, promising to defeat all Kishin and make the world safe for humans again. A captured worshipper argues that the bush's long resistance has only hurt civilians caught in the conflict. The captain responds, saying he's heard these arguments before but believes fighting for freedom is better than living under false peace controlled by the Oni. He declares that the bush's dream, passed down through generations, has made them stronger, and this generation will be victorious over the Oni. As everyone celebrates, Musashi is upset that his first big achievement was taken away. The captain approaches him in Kojuro, jokingly apologizing for overshadowing them, which Kojuro accepts. Musashi, trying to keep his feelings in check, walks away silently. But the captain and his team tease him, calling him a sore loser, which causes Musashi to finally let out his frustrations. Recognizing Musashi's potential, Captain Takeda gives him a large crystal as a consolation prize for overshadowing his victory, acknowledging Musashi's efforts and contribution. Kojuro and Musashi look at the crystal more closely and discover it functions like a telescope. Kojuro remembers seeing something similar in his father's scroll. In the scroll, a man is holding an object that looks like the crystal. Inside the crystal, Musashi notices a pattern resembling a large red object in the scroll, which Kojuro identifies as an Oni. They realize Captain Takeda gave them the crystal to find Oni. Reading the scroll, they learn there are over 100 Kishin in Hinamoto, all listed in the scroll, including the Inokatenga they just defeated. The scroll predicts that defeating all the Kishin will unify Hinamoto, and the one responsible for this, the Great Unifier, will become the new king. Musashi boldly tells Captain Takeda that he will be the one to unite the land. Takeda doubts Musashi can do it alone, but Musashi argues that the Takeda band hasn't succeeded in 150 years. Takeda admires his confidence and wishes him luck. The next day, Kojuro and Musashi leave their town to hunt the next Kishin. Musashi reflects on how his life would have been different without Kojuro and his father's teachings. Their journey is tough, with minimal supplies and constant bickering over small things. Kojuro shows his self-sufficiency by catching fish, while Musashi leaves in frustration, vowing to prove his fishing skills. Kojura feels bad about the argument, acknowledging Musashi's fighting skills when he senses someone's presence. Meanwhile, Musashi, unsuccessful in fishing, feels guilty about their fight and goes to find Kojura, only to discover him injured on the ground. Before he can react, a green-haired girl named Sugue attacks Musashi, demanding their valuables, including the kei Tsuki. However, Musashi easily overpowers her, finding her quick but light and weak. When Sugune finds herself at a disadvantage, she pulls out some intimidating weapons. But then, a horn sounds in the distance, alarming her. Worried about being late and upsetting her lord, she quickly steals the kei Tsuki and runs off. Musashi and Kojura, needing their transport back, decide to follow her. Sugumi reaches the fortress of Kosumida Ban, where she meets with Captain Hideo Kosumida. She apologizes for being late but proudly presents the stolen kei Tsuki. Captain Kosumida smiles warmly, hugs her, and praises her for contributing to the Bush's goal of uniting the land. Meanwhile, Musashi and Kojura arrive at the fortress, realizing they've encountered another bush band. As they wander through the vast halls searching for their mount, Sugumi appears and offers to lead them to it, claiming she only borrowed it. Her cheerful demeanor raises their suspicions. Following her, they see the fortress is like a bustling town with farmers, blacksmiths, medics, and all sorts of resources essential for the bush bands. These fortresses are like traveling communities, supporting the bands and their families who have lived there for generations. This makes the bands like big, close-knit families fighting together. While touring the fortress, they meet some children who want to spar with Sugumi. She's too tired, so Kojura steps in to play with them. Musashi is impressed by the vibrant life within the bush community and the happy families, but he notices Sugumi's sadness. She reveals that, despite the close-knit community, she has no blood relatives there. She once had an older sister, Subaim, who was her role model, but she died, leaving Sugumi alone. Musashi relates to her loneliness, sharing that he, too, is on his own. During their visit, Captain Kosumida hosts a grand feast to welcome Musashi and Kojura. He expresses his hope for an alliance with them, impressed by their high-quality kitetsu, which leads him to believe they are elite bush warriors with many Kishan kills. The boys, unsure how to react, just laugh awkwardly. Captain Kosumida proposes they join his band to combat the numerous stray Oni in the area, which would help reduce casualties and allow them to share the Kekitetsu. Musashi and Kojura are confused, not knowing what Kekitetsu is. Upon realizing their ignorance, the captain deems them useless and orders Sugumi to capture them. Sugumi, reluctantly using her twin blades to produce glowing green whips, apologizes as she restrains them. The boys are locked up, and the captain orders his men to search their belongings for any hidden Kekitetsu. Believing they might have more due to their high-end Kekitetsu, Sugumi faces reprimand for failing to recruit powerful bush, with the captain harshly calling her useless and stupid. The band is in a precarious situation, short on fighters and Kekitetsu after repeated battles with Oni. The captain is determined to protect the land, even considering mobilizing all civilians for the next Oni attack. Sugumi tries to speak against mobilizing women and the elderly, but the captain silences her. He then switches to a more caring demeanor, assuring her of his support while emphasizing her dependence on him. Later, Sugumi visits Musashi and Kojura in their cell, asking about any hidden Kekitetsu. Upon realizing they truly don't know, she explains that Kekitetsu is a white, glowing iron dust obtained from defeated Kishin, which Bush used to enhance their power. The band urgently needs Kekitetsu as they face an imminent threat from a herd of dangerous Kodama Oni. Musashi notices Sugumi's distress and encourages her to open up. Overwhelmed, Sugumi admits her opposition to the total mobilization and her fear of everyone dying. She breaks down, accusing Musashi of prying into her thoughts, and runs away. That night, Kojura uses his remarkable aim to retrieve the cell key, allowing them to escape. They recover their Kekitetsu and hear a foreboding rumble in the distance, signaling trouble approaching the castle rapidly. Amidst the chaos in the castle, as an incoming wave of Oni approaches, Lord Kasumida orders Sugumi to initiate the total mobilization. However, Sugumi, finally voicing her opposition, rejects the command. Enraged, Kasumida nearly assaults her, but restrains himself, instead resorting to emotional manipulation. He feigns tears, expressing his disappointment in Sugumi, whom he had raised as his own daughter. Threatening to cast her out, he dangles her over the railing, declaring her no longer part of the band and forcing her to face a life of isolation. Sugumi, terrified of being alone, complies with his demands. Alone with a portrait of herself, her sisters Subaim, and Lord Kasumida, Sugumi reflects on the abusive treatment both she and her sister endured. Realizing its impact on their self-esteem and well-being, she resolves to defy Kasumida to protect the townspeople. At this critical moment, Musashi and Kojura dramatically enter by crashing through the wall on their kei Tsuki. They encourage Sugumi, who then agrees to help them retrieve their weapons in exchange for their assistance in her plan. After equipping themselves, they devise a strategy to ensure the safety of the townspeople. Meanwhile, Lord Kasumida addresses the civilians, urging them to join the battle against the looming Kodama Oni swarm. The townspeople, inexperienced and fearful, try to flee but are blocked by armed guards. Sugumi seizes the moment, using smoke bombs to grab attention. She declares that the true duty of the bush is to protect their people, criticizing the folly of sending untrained civilians into battle and predicting devastating casualties. She suggests instead that they take shelter and wait for the Oni swarm to pass, then seek assistance from Lord Takuga. Her bold stance challenges the prevailing mentality and opens a new path for the civilians' safety. Sugumi's speech is a strategic move to distract Lord Kasumida, allowing time for the townspeople to escape. Using the cover of smoke, Musashi and Kojura quickly incapacitate the guards, clearing a path for the civilians. However, to Sugumi's dismay, they remain frozen in fear, still intimidated by the Lord's presence. Determined to break this fear, Sugumi confronts Lord Kasumida, but he quickly overpowers her, having been her teacher. He berates her in the onlookers, asserting their dependence on him. In a defiant moment, Sugumi spits blood in his face and reignites the battle with her twin blades, eventually managing to bind him with her green rope. This act of bravery enables the civilians to flee just before the Oni swarm arrives, leaving only Lord Kasumida and Sugumi behind. As the swarm approaches, Sugumi, resigned to her fate, contemplates her actions and her sister's memory. But Musashi, reaching out with his hand from the Kitetsuki, offers her an escape. She accepts, and they flee the crumbling fortress. Despite the destruction left by the Oni, the liberated townspeople seem happier, free from the Lord's tyrannical rule. An unexpected request comes from an old woman, who asks Musashi and Kojura to expel Sugumi from the fortress. She explains that the betrayed and increasingly obsessed Lord Kasumida could manipulate Sugumi again if she remains. Sugumi, torn between her attachment to the people and her need to escape Kasumida's influence, ultimately decides to leave and join Musashi and Kojura's band. The group receives a heartfelt farewell from the townspeople, who chase after their departing Kitetsu with dandelions, wishing Sugumi well. Following the direction of the kaleidoscopic crystal, they head towards a location harboring a blue Kishin, setting up camp along the way. In the night, an Oni stealthily steals Kojura's sword. Musashi follows it with a metal staff, only to have it break against the Oni's horn. He finds himself in a landscape filled with swords. A cloaked man, Shido, offers him a sword from the collection. Upon wielding it, Musashi experiences a surge of power, using it to annihilate the Oni. The sword, infused with Kaitetsu, absorbs the Ona's iron dust but then shatters. Apologizing to Shido, Musashi learns that the sword was flawed. Shido, intrigued by Musashi's ability to draw such power from the sword, wonders if Musashi is the person he has been searching for. Amidst Musashi's encounter with the enigmatic sword enthusiasts, a woman scolds the man for his obsession with swords, and they both leave abruptly, apologizing for the inconvenience. Musashi tries to introduce Kojura and Sugumi to these mysterious individuals, but they find that both the people and the swords have vanished. Skeptical about Musashi's story, Kojura and Sugumi wonder if he was dreaming. Musashi, however, is eager to use a Kaitetsu blade again. Sugumi shows them her twin blades made of Kaitetsu, explaining it's the only material capable of cutting through an Oni's horn. Intrigued by the rarity of such weapons, Musashi and Kojura are eager to embark on a quest to acquire them. However, Sugumi suggests a simpler solution, buying them at a market where merchants sell various goods, including Kaitetsu weapons, to bushbands. They arrive at a bustling market full of bush, where items are auctioned for the highest bidder using Kaitetsu as currency. While waiting for the Kaitetsu blade auction, they visit a ramen shop. There, they encounter a drunken man who inquires about their band's name, leading them to realize they haven't chosen one yet. Musashi nominates Kojura as the captain, and they quickly decide on the name Kanamiki Band. At the Kaitetsu blade auction, an array of swords is presented by the Rizoji band. Musashi is advised by Osafu Mitsuru, the band's headsmith, to choose a blade that he feels a connection with, as it's a significant rite of passage for a bush. Musashi selects a black and red sword named Enmizwadachi, while Kojura chooses Vorpal Cherry Blossoms, a katana he feels a connection with due to its unnoticed presence. Upon holding their chosen swords, Musashi and Kojura undergo the sword's trials, which test if they are worthy of wielding them. Musashi is overwhelmed with a strange sensation, while Kojura experiences a surge of energy, his life flashing before his eyes. Successfully passing the trials, Kojura's sword emits a blue aura, and wings of glowing stone emerge from his body, officially marking him as the blade's owner. They observe other bush around them, each glowing in different colors, signifying their successful bonding with their kaitetsu blades. Osafu, observing the trials, explains that each bush has a colored soul, which resonates with the minerals in the kaitetsu blades, causing them to glow in matching colors. There are 5 soul colors, each granting different powers to the kaitetsu blades. Kojura's blue soul is relatively common, and red souls are deemed essential in every band. Meanwhile, Musashi remains suspended in his trial, experiencing a haunting vision of his hometown and a traumatic past event involving Kojura's father, Jisai. In his vision, Musashi desperately tries to understand Jisai's final words, but is interrupted by a mysterious woman who comforts him before transforming into a menacing figure and rejecting him. Returning to reality, Musashi is engulfed in a dark, ominous aura, and black spikes emerge from his body. Osafu recognizes this as a sign of a forsaken soul, a rare and troubling occurrence in bush lore. Despite multiple attempts with different swords, Musashi repeatedly fails the trials, surrounded by the same black aura. Osafu eventually tells him that those with black souls are rejected by all kaitetsu blades, leaving him with no option but to abandon his dream of becoming a bush. As the group grapples with this revelation, a bull-like Oni attacks. Alarms signal the approach of a Kishin, sending lesser Oni to the town. Musashi, feeling powerless and hopeless, watches as Kojura heroically uses his new kaitetsu blade to save lives, including a mother and her child. Overwhelmed by the praise Kojura receives, Musashi resigns himself to a non-bush fate and urges Kojura and Tsugumi to continue without him. Left alone, Musashi encounters Shiro Inakai, the mysterious swordsman from earlier, who reveals that he also possesses a black aura. Shiro suggests that Musashi could become powerful by embracing the black stones and the sensations from the sword trial. Demonstrating his own abilities, Shiro creates a massive pit with his sword. He challenges Musashi to undergo the sword trial to become a potent kaitetsu wielder. Confused, Musashi resists the idea, wanting to fight alongside his friends rather than becoming a sword. Shiro, undeterred, pushes Musashi and the kaitetsu blade into the pit. On the mountain, Kojura and Tsugumi hurry to confront the Kishin, with Kojura resolving to move forward and wait for Musashi to recover. Tsugumi speculates that Musashi's rare black aura might indicate a legendary lineage, potentially harboring extraordinary powers yet to be discovered. Kojura shares with Tsugumi his past, revealing that he was the last bush child in their town. He lived in isolation with his father to avoid harassment, spending most of his childhood alone until Musashi, uninhibited by societal norms, approached him to learn swordsmanship. Tsugumi ponders what might be causing the kaitetsu blades to reject Musashi. Meanwhile, at the pit, Nano Inasakana, the woman from Musashi's vision, returns. She deduces that Shiro Inakai, having realized the presence of the Obsidian goddess within Musashi, manipulated him into the pit. Nano expresses sympathy for Musashi, aware of the difficult choice he faces. Musashi, falling into the pit, grabs the kaitetsu blade thrown after him, triggering an eruption of black stones from his body. He must choose between falling into magma or succumbing to the transformation into a black stone. Opting for the latter, Musashi begins to climb the pit wall, but a female voice intervenes, causing more stones to merge and forcing him into the magma. There, he encounters the Obsidian goddess, who urges him to stay with her forever. Musashi refuses, insisting on fighting alongside his friends. The goddess, taking a demonic form, reminds Musashi of a traumatic childhood event. After his parents' death, he was taken in by a family under strict, desperate for acceptance. Musashi once threw a rock at Kojura's father, aligning with societal prejudices against the bush. The goddess asserts that Musashi's desire to be a bush stems from his longing to feel useful and appreciated, arguing that such a person cannot wield a kaitetsu blade. As Musashi becomes encased in black rocks, the goddess proposes they remain together, isolated from the world. At the summit, Kojura and Tsugumi confront the headless Kishin. Unable to find its horn, they speculate that it might be located in the missing head. In a dramatic turn of events atop the headless Kishin, Shiro Inakai reveals himself as the one who decapitated it. Surrounded by bush warriors, he declares his intent to collect all their kaitetsu blades and mercilessly dispatches them with his sword. Recognizing Kojura, Shiro targets him, elaborating on the glory of a bush's death and the belief that their soul resides within their blade. He also mentions that Musashi has already become a kaitetsu blade. Meanwhile, the Obsidian goddess is content believing Musashi has transformed into black stone, ensuring their safety. However, she is dismayed by a distant green light, indicating that Musashi hasn't fully succumbed. Nano Inasakana rescues Musashi from the magma pit, surprised to find him still resisting the complete transformation into black stone. Musashi thanks her and hurries to aid his friends at the summit. Reflecting on his past, Musashi realizes his true motivation for being a bush. After an incident in his youth where he threw a rock at Kojura's father under peer pressure, he sought forgiveness. Kojura's father not only forgave him but also took him in, teaching him the essence of being a bush, loyalty to what one cherishes. As Shiro confronts Kojura and Tsugumi, he is about to deliver a fatal blow when he senses Musashi's arrival and stops. Musashi, armed with a kaitetsu blade but not blowing like other bush, joins the fray, indicating some progress in his transformation. Nano Inasakana apologizes to Shiro for interrupting Musashi's transformation and engages them in battle, splitting her blade into 7 deadly weapons. Musashi, Kojura, and Tsugumi devise a plan. As Musashi and Tsugumi distract Nano, Kojura confronts her directly. Nano sends all her blades after Musashi, but Tsugumi's whips catch them. Seizing the opportunity, Musashi destroys one of Nano's blades. However, Nano remains confident with 6 blades remaining. Shiro then steps into the battle, dismissively stating he doesn't need Nano's assistance. With a powerful swing of his sword, he flips the entire mountain upside down, causing most of the bush warriors to fall. Musashi, Kojura, and Tsugumi narrowly manage to cling on with their swords, surviving the catastrophic upheaval. In the midst of the chaotic battle, Shiro Inukai continues his onslaught against the bush warriors, viewing them as weak and ineffectual. He advocates for the supremacy of individual strength and the most potent kaitetsu blade as the key to defeating Oni. As he unleashes a shockwave with his sword, Musashi faces imminent danger. At this critical moment, the Obsidian goddess intervenes, using her power to temporarily halt time and save Musashi. She sees value in his ability to forge alliances and entrusts him with her power, recognizing it as crucial in the struggle against the Oni. As time resumes, black stones emerge on the mountain, drawing the energy of all kaitetsu blades, including Shiro's, which Musashi catches. This action reverses Shiro's mountain flipping technique and restores safety to the bush warriors. Musashi, now fused with the goddess and sporting long black hair, gains control over blade energy through the power of the black stones. Nano's attacks are effortlessly deflected, illustrating the stone's ability to manipulate blade energy. However, this power is temporary. The goddess's presence in the mortal world is weakening, and soon she will have to retreat, leaving Musashi to rely on his friends. In the time she has remaining, the goddess harnesses the energy of nearby blades to unleash a formidable attack on Shiro and Nano, showcasing the strength of unity. She reveals to Musashi that she will soon return to a dormant state, lamenting that Jisa, Kojura's father, couldn't complete their shared mission. Following the goddess's powerful assault, Musashi returns to his normal state. Kojura and Segumi rush to embrace him in relief. Sifuen and other bush warriors express their gratitude, offering Musashi a superior kaitetsu blade to replace the one he overused. Meanwhile, Shiro and Nano, having narrowly escaped, manage to abscond with the captured headless Kishin. Shiro, despite the setback, is content to have located the Obsidian goddess and is confident of capturing her in their next encounter. The following day, Musashi faces another sword trial, this time before an audience, with the same blade that he previously failed with. The outcome of this trial remains to be seen, as Musashi continues his journey, now armed with newfound insights and alliances. Musashi's sword trial begins amidst doubts from Kojura and Segumi about whether the black stone will appear, considering the Obsidian goddess's slumber. As Musashi takes hold of the sword, he is enveloped in a bright red glow, symbolizing his successful completion of the trial. This achievement is met with great excitement, as the red aura is the rarest among the 5 soul colors. After the trial, Musashi privately asks Kojura about any knowledge his father might have had of the Obsidian goddess, given her recognition of Jisai. Kojura is unsure, only aware of the katana scroll his father left at Kitetsuki Mount. Musashi wonders how Jisai acquired a kaitetsu blade, considering no one else in their village possessed one, hinting at possible connections outside Tatsuyama. As the bush camp disperses, Musashi and Segumi wait for Kojura, who returns with supplies in a map of Hinamoto. Inspired by his father's stories, Kojura is eager to explore the wider world of the bush and suggests heading east. During their journey, they rescue Princess Mikiru Soratari, the daughter of the head of the Soratari band, from an Oni attack. In gratitude, she offers them a ride and advises against traveling towards a mysterious black area on the map. She explains that it represents the Black Kishin, the first Oni to appear in Hinamoto, which has grown massive due to worship and offerings from a faction of humans. Mikiru's father, a leading bush general, is dedicated to defeating this colossal threat. Following the princess's departure, Kojura and Musashi ponder Jisai's knowledge about the Black Kishin and revisit his scroll. Segumi reveals that all bush band members carry such scrolls, and upon closer inspection, they discover that Jisai was once a member of the Usagi band, one of the factions actively opposing the Black Kishin. And this was the end of Season 1. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. Until next time, take care.